All right, this is a video for project 1. And what we're going to do is I'm going to answer the first question and the third question. So the first one is unemployment exists in economy and deflation is occurring. So the two key things is unemployment, deflation. Now, I'm going to draw a little graph to represent this situation. This vertical line is going to represent GDP natural. That means if we get our intersection of our short-run aggregate supply and aggregate demand curve to intersect any place on this line, we will have a GDP that fully employs our economy. So in terms of in this circular flow, what that means that this GDP, this is GDP is in this box right up here. The amount of goods and services that we produce, that firms are producing, are going to fully employ particularly labor, but land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. That will be full employment. And that happens only at this unique level of GDP right here. Remember that the horizontal axis is representing GDP, and the vertical is price level. Now for this scenario right here to exist, for unemployment to exist in the economy, what we have to have is an intersection of the short-run aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve to be to the left of that GDP natural. So that intersection right here is to the left of GDP natural, and we call this the GDP at equilibrium. Now, it makes no difference whether the economy is fully employed, overemployed, or underemployed. There is going to be an equilibrium where the short-run aggregate supply curve and aggregate demand curve cross. What we want to do is we want to get that intersection to be either along this short-run aggregate supply curve right up here with the aggregate demand curve going through, or we want to have it so the SRAS curve is right down here going through right there. And then we would get GDP natural, full employment. Now, in order to determine which curve we should move in this scenario when there's unemployment and deflation, deflation is the key. We want to move the curve, either the SRAS to the right or the AD to the right, that curve that causes this deflation to go away. Well, what does deflation mean? It's saying that the price level is going down. So we want to move a curve that counteracts the downward pressure on price levels. You can see that that means that this AD curve has to move to the right. So this would be the correct thing to have happen is this AD curve move to the right so that we get an intersection at GDP natural. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down what the way to answer this first question. And what the first thing you're going to answer is, what are you going to do? And we're going to move AD curve right. Now, how are you going to do it? And how are you going to do it is addressing on this AD curve, it's addressing all of these things as what is going to have to happen to these to move that AD curve to the right. Now, any one or all of these must occur. The first thing you notice over here, it's talking about total expenditures. So total expenditures must increase. Total expenditures must increase. Now, in order not to have to write all this out all the time, I'm going to use shorthand. Total expenditures increase. And then I don't have to write all the words out. Now, in order for total expenditures to increase, you notice the first thing is that consumption, and I'm just going to use C, must increase. And then there are three things under consumption that must happen. First of all, wealth has to increase. And the second thing is that interest rates, and in order for interest rates to affect consumptions, interest rate would have to decrease. And the C part is taxes. And in order for consumption to increase, taxes would have to decrease. Now, this is pretty easy to see why taxes have to decrease when you look at circular flow. You see, if taxes go down, then disposable income increases, and that means that you have more disposable income to spend, and there's only two things you can do with it. You either consume or save, and right now that the consumers, for every dollar they get, they're spending 98 cents. So if taxes go down, for every dollar it goes down, disposable income would go up by $1, and consumers would spend 98 cents. So that would cause consumption to go up. So that's what we're talking about there. Now the second thing, notice taxes go down, consumption goes up, total expenditures go up, AD curve moves to the right. That's how this thing works. The number two thing is that investment gross must go up for total expenditures to go up and AD move to the right. The first thing is expectations. Now, people invest money depending upon their expectations. So if your expectations of future profits from your investment increase, you will invest more, total expenditures go up, AD curve moves to the right. The second thing that people look at when they're doing investment is interest rates. Now, interest rates have to decline because when you compare the interest to the expected rate of return, then you decide to invest. So if interest rates fall, you will invest more, so investment will go up, total expenditures up, AD right. The third thing that happens is government. Government spending has to increase. Now that increases just because of government policy. The policy is to increase spending. And then the fourth thing is that exports net must increase. And the first thing that happens is we export more than we import if foreign economies improve. So improving foreign economies. So this is how it works. Foreign economies improve, exports net increase, total expenditures increase, AD moves to the right. And then the last thing is the value of the dollar. And that has to decrease. If the value of the dollar decreases, then foreign economies can buy our products at a cheaper amount of money. So they will buy more of our goods, exports net will increase, total expenditures increase, and AD moves to the right. So this is the way you answer the how part in this. And then it's going to be the result. What's the result of all of these actions that cause the AD curve to move to the right? Well, notice that if you look back up here, AD moves right, GDP equilibrium moves to GDP natural, right? So GDP equilibrium goes towards GDP natural. Now, as that happens, the unemployment will, the unemployment, I'll just go rate, will decrease to natural rate of unemployment. You see, if there's high unemployment, that would be like we are today, 5.4, 5.6, or 7 or 8%. The natural rate of unemployment is generally considered to be around 5%. So just like our economy is gradually going towards 5%, we're gradually moving to the natural rate of unemployment. That natural rate then will be reflected in our first goal. So our first goal, measurable goal, and that first goal is full employment. And that will be met. Because you see we're at GDP natural. That's full employment. Now the next thing that's going to go on here, if you notice, if we draw a line across here, this is the price level at this equilibrium. When we get to our new equilibrium, that's the price level, and the price level has increased. So now what we can say down here is that the price level is increasing, which is offsetting existing deflation. And then our second goal, and that's price level stability, is met. So we got 2 of our 3 goals met: full employment, price level stability, and that's the only 2 we're going to talk about in this project. Now, the next thing you should consider is this: what's going to happen to the budget? The budget is the yearly income and expenses of the government. Now, notice if you look at this circular flow, what have we done to taxes? We have lowered taxes. What have we done to government spending? We have increased government spending. Well, then what's going to happen to the budget for the government? What would happen to your budget if your income went down and your spending increased? Your budget would is deficit spent. The government is spending more than what the income is. Now that's the way you're going to answer the first scenario, and you're going to have to alternate this with the second one, because the second one you're going to have overemployment and inflation. So I'll just draw what you have in the second situation in terms of the graph. This is going to be your GDP. Going to be your GDP natural. But your intersection is overemployment, so your SRAS and your AD is going to intersect out here, like that. And the second scenario says we want to get ourselves back to this GDP natural from this GDP equilibrium. We're either going to have to move the SRAS curve to the left or the AD curve to the left. Now, if you notice that we have inflation occurring, so what are we going to want to do? We're going to want to move the AD curve left. That's going to give downward pressure to our price levels. So price level is going to go down. And our GDP equilibrium is going to go towards GDP natural. We're going to go towards full employment. We're actually going to decrease. We're going to increase our unemployment, because this would indicate unemployment like below 5%, 2 or 3%, and you're going to want to raise it. So you'd raise to the natural rate, and then your price level is going to go down, which will offset the inflation. So I've kind of told you what you're going to have to do. But what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to address it just like I did here, because you're going to move the AD curve, but you're going to have to change all of these around. AD moves left, total expenditure down, so on, down through it, and then give the what, how, and result for that particular move. Now what I'm going to answer is I'm going to answer this third scenario. If you notice that we did one, and then there's a second one, and then this one that I'm going to answer is actually the third one. So I'm going to answer this, the third one, and the third one is unemployment exists in economy and inflation is occurring. Okay, so basically it's unemployment, inflation. Now I'm going to draw the graphical representation of this situation. This is once again GDP natural. And I have unemployment, so once again, as in the first example, my intersection is going to be to the left of my GDP natural, because there's unemployment. And I'm going to either want to move the AD curve to the right or the SRAS curve to the right. Now, the difference here is that we have inflation in the economy, so we want the price level to do what? Go down. So what we want to do is we want to move the SRAS curve to the right. And notice what that's going to do. It's going to make this price level go down, and we're going to have inflation being controlled in this process. So this is SRAS, AD, and this is my new SRAS. So as before, I'm going to say, what did I do? I move SRAS right. How did I do it? Now, how I did it is going to be given to me in my circular flow diagram by using these values over here. So I'm going to have to move it to the right, and I move it to the right by cost of production has to, now here's where it's going to be a little bit tricky. Cost of production decrease. If you decrease the cost of production, you can move your SRAS curve to the right. Now, how are you going to do it? The first one is you decrease wages. The second thing you do is you decrease non-labor input cost. Now, wages typically are not something that we would decrease. but non-labor input costs could go down. An example would be when when the oil drilling occurred in North Dakota and the barrels of oil prices went down, gas prices went down, so that's a non-labor input cost. It decreased, and it's going to decrease the cost of production, and it's going to help move the SRES curve to the right. The next thing is increase in productivity. Now, if you notice on that circular flow, the increase in productivity right here comes from increase in technology, new capital purchases. Going back to another reason why the oil has been discovered is that they're using two things: hydraulic fracking, and secondly, horizontal drilling. Both of those innovations have caused them to be able to extract more oil and oil in places they haven't been able to get it before, and that causes then cost of production to go down and the SRES curve to move to the right. Now, the next thing is a positive supply shock. Now, usually this is out of the realm of something that man can do. It's usually that something occurs, and I can't think of one that relates to gas exploration, but in agriculture, a positive supply shock would be good weather for farming. And either they plant a lot of grain because the weather's right, they get moisture, the weather's right, and that's a positive supply shock. Negative would be there's massive hailstorms on agriculture or on anything, or tornadoes that destroy something. That would be either positive or negative supply shock. Now the result. Once again, GDP equilibrium goes towards GDP natural. Now, just as a comment, no matter whether you're going from the right-hand side, an equilibrium that's on the right where you have overemployment and you're going back to GDP natural, or left you're going, it don't make any difference. Your GDP equilibrium is always going towards GDP natural. You do not have to say it goes left to it or it goes right to it. You don't have to, and don't say that GDP natural goes towards GDP equilibrium, because that isn't what's happening. It's always GDP equilibrium is going to GDP natural. Now, unemployment in this case once again decreases to natural rate. Of unemployment. And then our first goal, and that goal stated, is full employment. Is met. Now, price levels are falling. Offsetting existing inflation and our second goal price level stability is met. Now notice that there's no government involvement, no change in taxes, no change in government spending involved in this, so there's no effect on the budget. So this would be the answer to this particular problem. Now, the last one, just to give you an idea where to go with it, it's going to talk about overemployment. So we're going to set up our GDP natural. But our intersection is going to be, to the right of that. That's overemployment. So I got GDP equilibrium. So what you need to do is you need to move this GDP equilibrium back to GDP natural. So notice that you're going to state in the result GDP equilibrium move towards GDP natural. And how you're going to do it is you're going to have overemployment and deflation. So you're going to want the price level to increase. And that means that this SRAS curve, you're going to want to move it to the left. And you're going to want to move it to the left until it gets to here. So this is going to be, that's where you're going to move it to. And notice that the price level is going to go up. And that's going to offset your deflating prices. But your unemployment is also going to go up to natural rate. So that's the way you're going to answer that number 4. But you're going to have to go through the scenario just like I did for you in 3. Now, what you need to do is you need to copy everything down that I have given you in 1 and 3, and then you need to modify in 2 and 4 those things that correctly reflect what has to be done to rectify those scenarios in the economy. So that is the extent of the project.